Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Accuracy in America, episode number 163. Once in a while, I'll actually say this. Anyway, I'm Don Irvine, joined once again by my co-host, Brian McNichol.
Good morning. Hello, deplorables, drags, despicables, chumps, Neanderthals, and dog-faced pony soldiers.
Yep, there's a lot of that going on. Before we get to the news, I'm declaring, as I've declared on Facebook, I am now a cord cutter. I
saw that.
Yeah, I didn't think I'd actually get there, but every 2 years I've been able to talk to Verizon and keep the price within what I thought was reasonable for a cable phone internet package. This time around, they just weren't budging, and it's like, okay, even if I just went with cable and internet, it wasn't saving that much, but the cable portion of that, is a good half the bill. And then you got to pay for the equipment on top of that if you got a cable box. And I'm like, this is just not making any sense to me. And pretty much the only real person who calls us on our landline phone is my mother-in-law. So she can just call my wife on her cell phone, I think, at this point. And so yeah, it's weird. I have no dial tone on purpose in the household. It's, for a guy my age, this is a weird thing to be at, but if you're cutting your bill about $70 or $80 a month at this point in time, it's probably worth it. I can go stream when I need to stream on. So
we cut ours about 10 years ago or so. We had a deal where you had to take the phone. We didn't want to even have the phone, and they gave us a phone number. And so you, like you said, the whole package of phone, internet, TV, and we never even plugged the phone in. So I really haven't had an actual home phone in close to 20 years.
Yeah,
I mean, you kid and people saying, "Hey, one day we're all going to have our own phone number," and I'm like, "Okay, first of all, you're going to need some new area codes," which ended up happening, right?
Right.
And second of all, why would that be? How will that work? And sure enough, now we all have our own phone numbers.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of resisted on the cord cutting because I'm just like, I was too lazy to sort it all out and say, what was this piece going to cost? And Verizon was always like, you got to have, the triple play, type of thing. So you'd have the phone, internet, cable. But now they're not really pushing the phone side of it anymore. I think so many people in the last several years are just using their own cell phone that they're getting very little usage on their VoIP thing anyway. So it's really not worth it for them at this point.
That's right.
But I mean, if you can pay $65 if you want to and get YouTube TV, why do I need to pay the cable company like $75 plus right now I'm gonna go without. And my youngest son was like, man, that's how I watch sports. But I'm like, maybe what I'll do, since I'm already getting Disney, maybe I'll just do that Disney Hulu, ESPN bundle for $13 a month. It won't cost me that much more money per month. And then he can have all the sports he wants again and just stream it. So,
right. That's virtually all I watch is live sports. So, that's a thing for me.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think I like the kind of thing where people can pick and choose what they want to watch. Right. So it works. All right. So real news here. Voting restrictions, voter suppression, Joe Biden going out there and fighting for all this freedom. He wants free and fair elections, goes out to Philadelphia, gives a speech, and talks about democracy. I mean, what is going on here?
Well, what's going on is the Republicans, they're not going to overturn the results of the election. Regardless what the pillow guy says, Trump is not going to be restored as president in the middle of August. But they do recognize there's been some vulnerabilities that got exposed there, and they are taking steps at the state level, which is where the Constitution says this has to happen, to make it, to secure elections, to shore up their election, the integrity of their elections. And they are finding the vulnerabilities that got exploited, and they are over the target, passing the bills. And that is why the Democrats are upset. It's not because, Jim Crow or whatever. It's because they figured out how you cheated and they're plugging those holes. So, I mean, they just got to get creative and start over. But, the idea of, 24-hour voting, vote boxes left outside, you just come by and put your vote in. Like, come on, man. There's no way that, that you can have sound elections run like that. There has to be custody of the votes, right? That it comes in through a system where we've satisfied that you are the person there and that you are legal to vote, and that's where you're supposed to vote and so forth. And we've got all that figured out before you vote. It's not you put it in, and when we're counting millions of votes, and we go through and see if yours is legal, right? That's not the way this is done. It's not the way it's ever been done. And Joe Biden knows that. And I believe this is him saying they recognize this is not going to pass. They're 8 or 9 votes short of even calling it off the calendar in the Senate. And so Biden wants to be able to say that he did his part. And that's about all it amounts to.
Yeah, and the thing, because we've discussed this before, I think on the show, talk about, what happened in 2020 was an aberration from a voting rules standpoint. I mean, the pandemic, everything got relaxed, and to me, this is something kind of akin to a lot of other things that were relaxed. I mean, in the state of Maryland, probably still happened. It probably happened in Virginia too. You had a lot of leeway on tolls. Maryland Toll Authority was actually not collecting all the tolls all the time throughout 2020. Car registration and fines. There were suspensions of a lot of things. They extended that. They extended. We have a vehicle emission inspection program. Right. That was extended. These are things that were only done because of the pandemic. Now as things return to normal, the rules, the laws that were in place before are going back into effect. Matter of fact, on the toll thing. So, I think I mentioned this before. I've been on, I'm part of Next Doors, how I tie in with all these neighborhoods. A lot of times it's neighborhoods that are not even really close to me, but it's kind of funny what they discuss. But there was a discussion that started probably about a week and a half ago where people started talking about the Maryland tolls. They started getting these bills from Easy Pass. And they were like, whoa, what's going on here? Those hundreds of dollars. Well, and they actually said, when they look back and said, the tolls are legitimate. They just weren't, they just had kind of forgotten about the fact that those had been a grace period. And so now instead of getting, the $25 here for that month or $10 here, they were getting hundreds of dollars that had accumulated, over 2020. And they were like, oh, but they understood, at least they were smart enough to understand that this was something that was legitimate. It wasn't the toll authority saying, they're billing them erroneously. They were now in a catch-up phase of doing all of this. And so we can talk, this goes all the way through a lot of things. So what is the problem, with the voting laws going back to the way they were and then tightening up the things that were defective? No, it's because the Democrats, they thought, hey, 2020, that's a bonanza for us. We were able to do lots of things we were never really able to do before. And now we want to codify and make this permanent. No.
Right.
And bully for the state legislators in Georgia and Texas and wherever else that they've been trying to basically say, ooh, we have some loopholes or some things that need to be fixed.
Right. We have some holes that have to be plugged, right? We're going to have fair elections.
In case anything like this happens again, it's kind of almost as like trying to make this kind of almost pandemic proof, situational. Say, we don't want to run into those situations again. So we're going to be prepared for all this. We're going to put these things into place so that it's all standardized. Nobody's going to have to get a grace period for all this stuff and all these things and all this. But no, the Democrats, they want everything. Bob is, Mumbles was unquestionably all bluster and no substance yesterday, and it was just kind of the speech without anything behind it.
Right. That's why I say I think it was just to placate his left flank. Hey, I went out there and I called them Jim Crow for the 80th time, and I did my bit, and sorry, but it didn't get it over the hill, and it's not going to go over the hill. I mean. And if it did, it's wildly unconstitutional, right? State election, federal government can't control state election law. And, it's specifically reserved in the Constitution of the states there's no way you're getting an amendment through for that. So the state will still control election law, and the federal government, Congress is wasting its time on this anyway.
Where do the Democrats keep insisting, keep on talking about Jim Crow? Do they really think that this is going to push them over the finish line or something, that this actually resonates?
You know what? I think they're playing with fire a little bit there, because if it's Jim Crow, then when you go to the polls or you go through the process of voting, however it is you do it, I mean, you ought to notice some real restraints on your behavior, right? You ought to notice some real problems there. And when people go vote, of all colors, they're going to notice that that's not the case, that voting is voting. It is what it's been for a long time now. And so, telling everybody, oh, these rules make it where you can't vote and your vote is silenced and all that. And when people go experience this, and it'll start, this November here in Virginia and New Jersey and, elsewhere next year, and they don't encounter all these log jams that they were told to expect, it's going to be a problem. That is analogous to me to, during the run up to the 2020 election, we would see all these memes of like Biden screwing up speeches and forgetting where he was and staring off into space and couldn't remember people's names. And so when the debate came, we were all expecting, a lot of people were expecting this bumbling fool to come out and mumble, right? And, he makes mistakes, and he makes more mistakes than other people, and he is suffering with some senility problems. But, he can hold a conversation most of the time, right? So when you saw him not slobber all over himself, then you're like, okay, I've been misled. Right? What I've been told to expect wasn't what happened here. And I think that's going to happen on this too. And the other thing is how long do Black people and Hispanic people accept the notion that the Democrats say that they are incapable of getting a picture ID, right? How long do you put up with someone saying that, you guys don't have a copy machine, and, you're not capable of dealing with the DMV, and, you don't have $5, to buy the thing or whatever. I mean, that's them asserting things that don't match people's experiences. And at what point do you notice that, these people keep saying things that I personally know not to be true?
Hey, look, I mean, we might, if Biden wants to send people out going door to door checking on the vaccine thing, which we've discussed before, why don't if you're concerned about this, why don't you go ahead and take some government workers and take a secure van and go door to door and make sure everybody's got their proper voter, their government ID. You could probably, with technology, you could probably do this somehow, some way, right? I mean, shoot. It's like, the arguments are just so specious. You mentioned the $5 thing, which came up in various states before. And even those states had said, look, if you can't afford to pay, we'll give it to you for free. They weren't going to use even the nominal amount of money as a barrier, to anything, because they didn't want to fall into that trap. Because, Democrats are, well, it's a poll tax. Well, if you're giving it to them for free, where's the tax? Right. So it's just kind of crazy. Now, the other part of this thing is that I don't know if Biden felt that, partly I think you're right there in terms of, he satisfies that far left flank, the Bernie Sanders, the AOC, and all these big progressive leftists out there in the party that have really are dictating a lot of the policy today. And then you have these Democrats in the House, Texas House. They fled the state on a private airplane, or maybe it was more than one plane, and they went to D.C. because they wanted to be there. They wanted to derail the vote on the voting laws that for the special session that Governor Abbott had called. And they're hailed as heroes. I mean, the Democrats are holding them up as these people that are, oh, look what they've done. They're saving democracy, all of this kind of stuff. And I don't like it when Republicans do that, but I find that this is so cowardly. This is driving me crazy.
Well, didn't they do this? They did this over abortion bills, a few years ago. It's kind of a, tired, familiar tactic. They're delaying the inevitable. Those bills are going to pass. The voting rights bills have already passed the Senate, right? In the last day or so, the Texas Senate did get a quorum and pass them. So it's just down to the House. and he's not paying them, and he's telling them he'll arrest them if they don't come back. So, you're not going to get it. The state's going to grind to a halt. The bill's going to pass. There's nothing you can do about it. Your constituents, if you push this long enough, your constituents are going to make you come back and let the bill pass. So, you can do this now or later or whatever, but it's going to get done before anybody votes for anything again in Texas.
Yeah, and I don't know the exact makeup of the Texas House, and just like anything else, I am sure there are some very deep blue districts that were drawn just by the legislature for purpose, but they're probably you can't do it everywhere in Texas, so you're going to have some of these Democrats representing areas that are maybe they're just a plus 2, 3, 4, 5 for them. You pull a stunt like this, you just said the constituents. How they cannot be satisfied with that. It's like that's a dereliction of duty. You're doing this. This is kind of
if you're for their side of this, then you're like defy them any way you can.
Right.
So I mean, if you're not, they're not going to lose a lot of votes on it, but they'll lose some people who don't understand the process and say they're mad at them for the inaction. Right. I mean, anytime like when the lowest point of Trump's polling the entire time he was president is when he shut down the government. People want to see these things work. However, good, bad, or indifferent, when you say, okay, we're going to stop the thing from working at all, you make some enemies doing that. But the other thing about it is like you were talking about, this is all performative. They know that these bills do not take away anybody's voting rights. They know that it doesn't make it more difficult to vote. They know that the aim of these bills and that they are designed appropriately to do what it is they're aimed to do, which is also important, is to reduce cheating, not to disenfranchise anybody. They know this. So all the things they're doing, all these protests are performative. This whole thing, all the people on the plane and all this, Biden stuff and everything. It's all a show. They all speak the same lines. They've been passed out a sheet of paper, talking points, always say these things about it, call it Jim Crow, say it's racist, say that they're reducing, it's unfair, and they all speak from the same sheet, and it's unimaginative, and it's not accurate. And they know it. They know it. All, their only problem is Republicans are over the target with these reforms. And as you said, most of these are not reforms. They're putting things back the way that they had always been before 2020.
Right. And the other thing just kind of ran through my head here just now too, is just that, we are in a redistricting year, and with Republicans in control, in Texas. I mean, I'm never in favor of gerrymandering and doing things, but the Democrats do it to Republicans all the time. I mean, it is the consequence of elections. I mean, I guess it's possible even that when they get down to redistricting, they can look at this and they can say, let's see what we can do here to kind of basically gerrymander, do some things here and force some couple of Democrats to face each other and just create districts that will reduce the number of Democrats in the House. And I don't necessarily think a lot of voters would complain about this after they pulled this stunt, and they're saying that they're going to stay out of the state. On top of all that, which is kind of nonsense.
For months.
Abbott, Governor Abbott has already said, hey, look, we'll call another session. He's not backing down. You're
not gonna win. You got to get back and do it. And, win some elections. You're not gonna win. You're not. The voter ID is an 80% issue. 80% of the people say, yeah, that's a worthwhile requirement, that you should have to. And that shows you that people understand, that voter integrity is part of this. So you balance it against access to the ballot, right? And one of the things Republicans have to be careful about here is, we're not against people voting, right? And, when you talk about extended hours on election day or a day off, and so forth, there's things to work through and all those proposals. But we can't just be the party of no on all that, because there is an argument out there to be made, and there's some validity to it, that it is hard for some people to make it in the hours provided, right? So you have places, they start at 7, they end at 8. If you have a long commute, you may not be home between 7 and 8, right? You may have to be gone at both ends of that. So, the states have some working through to do too. There's not zero to the case of polls opening and making it where everybody can get there. If polls were open, 6 a.m. to 10 p.m., we would have to wait a few extra hours to know how these races came out. And that would be agonizing for us political junkies. But, that would pretty much assure everybody of a chance to get to the polls, right? Nobody works from before 6 a.m. to after 10 p.m. Very few people have jobs that require that. And on election day, say on election day, you can't work that. You got to go vote, right? And I think the current climate, there's not a lot of employers out there, that if you have a 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. employee, you're saying, okay, I'm not letting you off for 1 minute to go exercise your franchise. I just don't see that happening.
Yeah, no, I think that goes back to, the states unquestionably need to control this. They know their population better, how things work there. And then they can tweak it as necessary to fit the population. If the population grows, exponentially, then you may have to extend those hours. Yeah, as you said, for political junkies, for people who really, they kind of want to be able to go to bed by 10 or 11, having a fair knowledge of mostly, who's won, who's lost, then extending the hours, will be agonizing for them. But on the other hand, that may be the better solution, because what's one of the liberals' biggest things is that, well, look at all these lines at 8 o'clock at night or 7 o'clock at night, people, and then the accusations that a lot of those people will never got a chance to vote. Well, extend the hours a little bit.
That works, yeah.
But but by a reasonable standard, if you said 6 a.m. to 10 p.m., that's what we're talking, 16 hours out of that's a lot. You're saying 2/3 of a day. If you can't get to a poll for that, then you're probably not likely to vote anyway. And that's
right.
And the attitude to me from the Democrats is just like everybody wants to vote, that they have all these people who want to vote. There are a lot of people who don't care. And that's their prerogative. That's their right. They don't have. Nobody ever said that you have to go vote. That is your.
And what I'm talking about, to be clear, is extending that day, right? Extending the hours on that day. Right. I'm not talking about voting a month ahead of time or a month afterwards or all that stuff. I'm talking about you vote that day, but that's the day. We'll stretch the hours. We'll make it where everybody can make it. But that day, you got to show up. If you can't show up that day, you don't get to vote, right? If other things are more important to you that day, then you don't get to vote. I don't see why that's so hard.
Yeah, look, I admitted that I've gotten late. The early voting stuff has been. I love it only because I'm lazy and I don't really want to face crowds of the voting booths. But look, if Maryland said, they said it's from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. on Tuesday, November, whatever, and that's it, fine. Then I will go on Tuesday, November, whatever it is, and I will vote between those hours. I did it when I was younger. I will do it now. I will, if the law says I can do it earlier, fine. But I'm not necessarily thinking that that's the greatest idea. I think that we have gotten, we have tried to make this over accommodation for things. Right. In a lot of,
it's not really about that. It's not really that there's a whole lot of people whose schedule does not allow them to vote. You're talking about a tiny fraction of people. Right.
And, I know the early voting has increased over the years, but initially when Maryland first started that, virtually no one was showing up to vote early, and I think you're going to see that there'll be waves depending upon whether it's a presidential election year with off year. I think lots of different things factor into whether or not you're going to get your turnout for early voting or whatnot and things like that. But is it a huge inconvenience to vote on one day? Absolutely not. Bob has come in with another comment here while we're talking about this. Makes good sense to focus on voter ID relative to various types of poll access issues to minimize potential for legitimate criticism from the left. Yeah. So I think that's right. So we'll see what happens. Governor Abbott is going to continue to push, and they'll get, like you said, they're going to get this through one way or the other. We don't exactly know when, but the Democrats that have fled the state there's only so much. They're only going to be able to do this for so long. I didn't look to see. It's like, who's paying for this anyway?
Right. That's another.
Yeah. Who
Leads us to another little item on the agenda here.
Yeah. Who paid for that, and who's paying for their time in DC and whatever.
Right. Right, because that's a lot of people in DC. As you know, the hotels are not cheap, and somebody's got to be footing that bill. And who is it? The other one is that you have on here is Cheney and Kinzinger both have these big poll, fundraising reports that have come out right after the end of the last month, and they are both proportional to what they need to run where they are. It looks like someone gave them the same basic amount of money, right? It looks like they are both over what they needed and so forth by about the same. Okay. So it tells me, like, where did this money come from? Like, Kinzinger has 3 times what he had in his the last cycle. He has 3 times in his bank account now what he had at any point in the last cycle. Okay. Cheney has about 70-80% more than she had in her last cycle. So in other words, in the last couple of weeks, in the last few weeks, I would say 4 to 6 weeks at the most, they have collected, in Kinzinger's case, 3 times, in Cheney's case, more than 1 time what they had in their entire cycle last year. Okay, so how did that happen? Who gave that money, and what do they expect in return? I think part of what this is, I think at the end of the day, it's going to be Lincoln Project types, never Trumpers, trying to show that this political movement has legs, right? That the never Trump wing of the party is a viable thing. And, I don't see that. It's just not there yet. You get the CPAC, in Dallas, they did 2 polls in Dallas. There were some interesting results. One of them was, their 2024 presidential poll. They said with Trump, and then they did one without Trump. And with Trump, he got 70%. Second place was DeSantis at 24%. Everybody else was down around 1%. And the one without Trump, DeSantis won. Pompeo was a distant second. Nobody else beyond single figures. But the question, should Trump run again, was 66% yes and 30% no. So, which tells me that's a pretty good waft of people out there that don't think it's a good idea for Trump to run. 30% strikes me as kind of high coming out of a CPAC meeting of, MAGA activists. That's kind of a big number. So, I don't know, but it's like, I don't see, so it's like, if not Trump, and to me, the problems with Trump are people perceiving that his personality, that his conflicts, would get in the way of him winning, or if he does win, serving effectively. And there's people who argue that was the case last time, right? And the people who are for the, say, Bush wing of the party, right? So you separate those two things. Cheney and Kinzinger are avatars of the Bush wing of the party. I think if you look at them, you're talking maybe that's 4 to 8% of the party, right? And I think the rest of it is people saying, to gain 2024, make sure we win. Maybe it's somebody who will do what Trump did without actually being Trump.
I love that they're avatars. You're so high tech now. You're just like with the whole. That's the thing. I mean, I think there's a lot to be said for that in terms of, because to show that Cheney and Kinzinger and their anti-Trump message resonates with Republicans. I think there's a lot of truth there, that it is these anti-Trumpers, the Lincoln Project types that are in essence trying to create some news, trying to say, yes, these people, this attitude, this kind of thinking is still viable. It'll be interesting if we take a deep dive and see.
The other stat I wanted to point out about the CPAC is, so Trump in the poll that Trump was in for president, he got 70%. They did the same thing when CPAC was in Orlando, 2 or 3 months ago, he got 55%. So Trump's support from then to now went up in the party, according to the, this particular measurement. A pretty good bit, a pretty significant bit, though.
Yeah, I would attribute some of that to the fact that if you're in Florida, there are going to be a lot of DeSantis type of people that will just pick him anyway. So I think, we know that the CPAC polls are just. I mean, it's just a bunch of numbers. There's no
or else Ron Paul would be wrapping up his fourth term as president right now.
Yeah, the accuracy of CPAC polls for the president of the United States not really good in the last 10 years or whatever, 12 years. But there are polls, and it does give you at least a little bit of the pulse of the attendees, right? So that you kind of see that, and I think the Texas crowd probably definitely much more of a pro-Trump MAGA crowd, overall with all of that. But yeah, that 30% figure, hopefully that's something that the Trump people think about. They don't focus in on the 66 number. They just say, what's the opposition number? We had some very pro, Trump people in this audience, and 30% of them still thought he shouldn't run. Trump has an immense amount of influence in the Republican Party. I am continually shocked by how much influence he still has over this, and how much I think he will continue to have, in the future about this. It drives the liberal media crazy, that.
Have you ever seen? Obama, he was not this kind of factor in Democrat politics after he left. We kind of thought he was going to be, right? A lot of people thought he was going to be. But they ended up getting slaughtered. The people. Who did he back? What was what did those people have in common? Who were they? It's not really. There's not really a big footprint there of people running on Obama's coattails while he was in office or after, right? It wasn't. They retook the House. It wasn't because they were Obama Democrats, right? Or they were. It was anti-Trump vote. So
right. Yeah, no, I mean, Democrat victories have really been based on the anti-Trump sentiment, not on any pro-Obama, pro-Biden, or anything like that. That that just doesn't really fit in the whole scheme of things.
And I'm wondering if that's losing its sting, because there's a lot of policy failures adding up now. The border failed. I don't know if you saw it today. Inflation, largest gain in inflation in more than 20 years, year over year, from this week in June to last year, this week, or July, to that last year, this week. It's like 20% or 5% inflation. So that's a big number. And people noticing that at the grocery store, everybody in the line is griping about the prices. So people are starting to say, okay, higher prices for food, definitely higher prices for energy. Border went from settled to unsettled. Middle East problems reappearing that have been dealt with. The things that they made a total mess of are coming back to haunt them. So, I think that the idea that, oh no, if this person ever thought about Trump, he's unacceptable. I think people are starting to say, hey, they had some stuff right on policy.
Yeah, no, look, I mean, I think we both know on the inflation thing that it's tricky. Okay, I'm not going to totally absolve the Democrats on this, but it's tricky because comparing it to 2020 is really not a good comparison. I think they really need to look at 2019. 2020 was such an aberration. Prices of things were just kind of crazy. A lot of stuff went depressed, and so then things, and we still have supply chain issues. Now the thing is that Biden, as a president, the Democrats, they have to own this. I mean, for better or for worse, they have to own this and try to figure out what's going on there. To see housing prices and used car and new car prices and things like this. There's a lot of stuff that in the supply chain that hasn't been resolved. I don't really see anything in the Biden administration where they have got an idea of how to fix the supply chain. which is going, I mean, that's going to be their problem. And if they don't fix the supply chain, then inflation is going to continue to be a problem going forward and things like this. Now the Fed chair, Jerome Powell, he's kind of calling the markets a little bit because, even under Trump, I mean, he and Trump had some battles too, but as they're trying to figure out monetary policy, they had set a target inflation rate of about 2% to try to manage things, and they had said that they were going to have interest rate increases, probably in 2022 or 2023, and they want to try to hold to that. Inflation has been going ahead, but he says it's going to remain higher than they probably really wanted to, but it'll moderate. I did see a report where used car prices are starting to trend downward a little bit, but it has been. I had some friends.
They're record levels.
It's just not. Look, we bought, and we weren't looking to do this. We just somehow I decided to go ahead and replace my car last year, and so I bought a new used car. Right, basically replaced my car. That car went to my younger son in Utah, and then the Civic he was driving, which is 2006, went to his brother in Arizona to get him a second car. Then we bought a car. We paid for a car for Spencer to replace the other car that we had given him that was basically on its last legs, for which basically it's a family loan kind of a situation.
Right.
But we got a huge deal on those cars now when you look at it, because the broker we used had a flood of like Camrys and all kinds of stuff from the used car from the rental lots, because all the rental all the companies had gotten rid of all their cars or a large part of their fleet. So the same car that we bought for Spencer last year, Nissan Camry, and very low mileage, about probably around $20,000 base price of then the taxes and whatever, and we paid like, I don't know, $900 or whatever it was to ship it to Arizona. That same car today with higher mileage is 25% more. The same thing for the Lexus, the used Lexus that we have. It's easily 20% more, and with higher mileage on to boot.
Yeah. And these are things that who buys used car, groceries, and gas? The poorest people, right? Everybody's got to buy those things. These are regressive taxes, and they are formed directly from Biden administration policies.
Right. And then so the Democrats are going to have to own this, because you can only.
They caused it.
Well, the thing is,
it's not just politics. They actually did the things that made these things happen.
We've got. Well, here's my thing is that as we get to the third and fourth quarter comparisons, we started to come out of this. Things started to turn around a lot more so, and so as a year from now, or when they do a comparison on inflation, we'll have a much better read of where we are there, because it'll be a little slightly more normalized situation, and we won't have this aberration going on in here. But the Democrats have got to figure out what their policies are. Now they're going to be heading right into that 2022 election. They don't want high inflation. They don't want all this stuff on their plate to do this, because we know that in general, the economy is a huge, huge issue when it comes to elections. And the Democrats will take a heavy hit from that. They're already in trouble now anyway. And the last thing you need those poorer people, the people on the lower rung of the economic scale, facing those higher gas prices, food prices, everything like that. Yeah, my wife is seeing it. I mean, she buys certain things, when she buys beef, she's like the beef. Can't remember what cut it was, but the beef she was buying even just months ago that was like $8, $7.99 a pound. When she went to the store, it was $12.99 a pound. Yeah. I mean, that's not 5% inflation. That's massive inflation.
That's right.
It's like, okay, what are we doing to fix this?
Yeah, you're talking about supply lines, stuff like beef. It's been really affected by that.
Yeah. So, and I have, and on the cars, we had friends of ours who needed to buy a new car. They've got a family of 7, I think it is. Anyway, they were going to take they had a road trip planned to Utah, and their older son had an accident with their old van, which was pushing 200,000 miles anyway. But the problem they were having was trying to find a dealer that would sell them a car, at sticker, because the dealers, everybody they'd gone to wanted $10,000 more above the sticker price, which they weren't going to pay. I don't know what they paid for their new car, but he did say he was surprised at how much he got as a trade-in for his old car, even though it needed a lot of repair. I mean, Spencer saw that too. Spencer's car did not deserve the amount of money he got for that old Lexus. But this is what happens, is that they look at this. Dealers have body shops. They can fix things in the dents, resell it, and still make money off of it in this nutty market. Right. It's just absolutely insane what we're going through. And the Democrats are going to pay a price for this unless things reverse. No doubt about it. But
they said it. I don't know if you saw this roll call. I guess had a poll last week. Said 78% of the aides on Capitol Hill believe that both houses of Congress will flip in 2022.
Well, that'll be interesting, because I think the Senate is going to be interesting. The House, I think, definitely. The Senate, it just depends. Right. But you never know. I mean, but
it tells you. I mean, those are people who they basically know how the fundraising is going. They basically know what their boss is saying every day, and the level of desperation and so forth. I mean, I can tell you, having worked up there, that if your boss is worried, he's a different person than if he's not worried, about re-election.
Yeah, no. So we'll see where that goes. So I want just to bring up this Joe Manchin, who's, I guess you could say, he's kind of drawn a line in the sand on infrastructure, and he's
saving America.
Yeah. And he wants, whether or not it's the bipartisan bill or the Democrats are trying to get this $3.5 trillion thing that they passed through reconciliation. He wants it to be paid for, which, I mean, it sounds good, but realistically, it's like, when technically has any big spending bill really been paid for by anything? They do these 10-year, to me, they always do these 10-year projections, and then nobody ever, so this is how it gets covered, and all the revenue and what's like this. But usually after it gets passed, does anybody really pay any attention to that anyway?
Well, here's the thing about it: a lot of these things have not been scored. So one of the points he's making is, at least show us what the numbers are going to be. Whether they add up to paid for or not. Tell us what it is. I mean, we spent $2.2 trillion more last year than we took in. The federal government did. So, I mean, that's an all-time record. So we added $2.2 trillion to the national debt just in the last 12 months. So you could say that was an extraordinary year because of COVID and whatnot. But, now these guys are talking about 3 and 4 and 6 trillion more dollars spent on this stuff. And, I think that you do have to start thinking about, where does the money come from? How do you pay for this? And how do you, at least get us on a track to where we start addressing it? And, and we're going the wrong direction. But, God bless him. He's saving America. He's saving us from some really bad legislation right now. And he's all that stands in the way if, we can hold our people in. Also, Larry Sabato was out with a thing this morning saying that Lisa Murkowski is in some polling trouble. So hopefully that she will take that to believe that, vote with the Republicans, vote with the people who actually put you in office and support you, on these bills. Because if she holds the line and Sinema and Manchin hold the line, neither one of those bills can get across the finish line with reconciliation or not. And all the, HR1, all that kind of stuff can't even come close because they don't have the votes. So thankfully, the worst instincts of the Biden administration are being stymied by, members of their own party.
And I want to know from Schumer and from Biden and all these people, it's like, exactly at this point in time with our economy, I mean, the growth rate is anywhere between 4 to 6, 7%, depending upon where you're looking in time. The economy is moving ahead. That's why we've seen this pickup in inflation and some other things. So things are, we've got jobs that are begging to be filled. All kinds of things are going really in the right direction. Why do we need to spend trillions of dollars? We're not in a recession. We're not. This is the Democrats, and we've got to spend this money. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Right, and it's a lot of it's based on. This is why I don't want us to get into trying to make a deal with them, because it's this Keynesian theory that if the government will spend money, it will put money into the economy and generate economic growth. Even the Biden administration admits that after the second year of this, it will have virtually no economic impact. So it's a 10, 12-year plan, and money will be going out the door for a lot longer than that because of the way these projects work and so forth. But you're not going to get benefit beyond the second year, if then, and that's them. That's their estimates. That's not even the critics. That's the supporters. So, I think that the idea that, the government spending will bring us out of malaise is error prone on both ends. One is, you're not really, as you said, you're not really in malaise. If the people would go back to work who are getting all these unemployment benefits, you have 8 million jobs unfilled in the economy. You want economic boost, get those 8 million people back on the job. Pay the bonus for going back to work instead of for staying home. Get $300 extra from us if you'll just go back to work. If you got to give somebody $300, that's the way to do it, right? Because right now you're incentivizing staying home, and a lot of those people, they're not ever going to go back. They're going to get comfortable not working and making it, surviving their life without a job, and they're not going to go get a job. So the time to get people thinking about going back to work is now, and that solves your economic problem. You don't need all this quote stimulus, right? And what it really is, especially in the second bill, is all green energy and social justice stuff anyway.
Right. I mean, the thing too is that how do you stimulate an economy when you put a lot of money into entitlements and all these other programs? That's not that doesn't do anything really. I mean, it's just that's right. Just your welfare benefits and your safety net and whatnot. You mentioned the unemployment benefits. I'm pretty steamed that Governor Hogan in Maryland tried to, he wanted to also join the other governors that have been ending the benefits which are supposed to run through September. And a judge has said, no, you have to do it until the program ends. This is insanity to me.
Yeah. Well, based on what? You read those stories that are saying they're making him do it. I mean, why is Maryland being treated differently in this? And why, if the governor, does he not have the power to do it? I mean, what is the court claim that he's losing on?
Yeah, I don't. That's what I don't understand. Is just that it's like why are they getting involved in this and doing this? It's just that, like we said, we've got all these jobs. We need people to fill these jobs. We've got businesses that can't run at full steam because they can't find the people to fill the jobs. Is a lot of people have left the jobs. The bartenders and a lot of the servers, they're not coming back. They've switched careers or whatever. Or they're too comfy. They don't want to go through that grind anymore. And so businesses, can't stay open as much as they wanted to before. It's just, even though the wages have gone up 10, 20, 30% in some cases to try to attract them, that's still not enough to attract them.
That's right.
This is a big problem, and the Democrats don't have any clue on how to solve it except for Biden say pay them more money. Well, they are trying to pay them more money, and they're still not coming back. So that's not working, Joe.
Right. You stop paying them. Stop making them compete against government payments. Right.
Right.
It's not hard. I mean, you can do the whole thing yourself.
Yeah, well, it's like, did you see how much they're getting paid while they sit at home and getting all this extra benefit?
We're competing against you, Joe. You can fix this.
Exactly. I want to ask you about this stuff going on in Cuba. So this was been fascinating to me, is that we actually had demonstrations in the streets in Cuba, and that that's now spilled over to Miami because there's a huge Cuban community in Florida, South Florida, and so Cuba has they've cut off all internet access. Their internet access was horrible to begin with, but they've cut it all off to prevent these things. And apparently, it started with these rappers, these kind of underground rappers that really took part on TikTok and things like this, talking about the fact that food, medicine. Just, it's a terrible situation in Cuba, which we've known for decades. And the Cuban government is, they're blaming the U.S. for stirring up these people. It's like, no, this is your problem.
Hey, you know what? I wish we were guilty of that, right?
Yeah.
But well, we're not. And our attitude is, hey, don't leave Cuba for us, man. Can't get in here. Mexican, you come in through Mexico, but you're coming from Cuba. We're not going to consider your asylum request. We don't care how much you're being persecuted by the government. Same, we said that to the people from Haiti too, which there can be some people who need to get out of Haiti now, right? The government changed hands forcefully. There's going to be problems there. But, that's our administration is, hey, they're mad about the economic mismanagement. And, those guys need to get their economic management together a little bit. This will be all right. We've got a generational opportunity here to change Cuba for the better. And, we don't have anyone who cares about freedom running our government, right? So we have, although I will say that I think he is less likely to, give away the store than Obama was, right? He thought these were wonderful human beings and, why were we depriving them? And, made a lot of concessions to them with nothing coming back in the way of return. So I think Biden does see through that and wants to, at least get something for it. He's more transactional, I think, than Obama is. So I think that, I wish them luck, and I would like to hope they make some progress, because that's been a lot of people mistreated, killed, tortured, deprived of economic, human, religious rights for a lot of years.
Yeah, it was interesting. I was reading a story that's saying that Cuba they were advised by both Vietnam and China to enact some market reforms, and that Cuba had refused to do so. They apparently have tried a little bit of this, and this is part of the result of that as well, is that they've just had their thumb down on these people for so long. They thought that's all they ever really needed, and voila, thanks to these underground people and all these kinds of things, we're seeing there's a little bit of a light there. Now, Obama's come in here. On Cuba, it's essential to call the regime what it is, a dictatorship rooted in failed economic and political ideologies. That's simple, yeah.
Right.
And we're seeing this come home to roost. But this is, like you said, this is a huge opportunity.
But we are well on our way to squandering it. It doesn't look like our guys to us. And, you have a bumbling administration that doesn't have a lot of confidence in its own ability to conduct foreign policy. And so they're going to let it slip away.
That's right. All right. 2 minutes.
2 minutes. So let's, I don't want to do that one. I don't care about that. Where's this thing? I did want to talk about, first of all, congratulations to Zayla Avante Guard from Harvey, Louisiana, down on the West Bank of New Orleans, winning the national spelling bee championship. Also appears to be a baller, pretty good basketball player.
Pretty amazing stuff.
Yeah. Got those multi-ball dribble. That's a big thing. That's a big development deal. And you can really, I do that with my kids. And you can really, it's fun because at the first of the season, they can't do it, right? And that ball's flying all over the gym, right? But by the end of the season, you have some of them who are really good at it. So you can see that they're like growing in their ability to concentrate and do that skill. But I also wanted to say other news from Louisiana this week, the death of Edwin Washington Edwards, our 4-term governor. He 4 terms of governor, 1 term in prison, which is a pretty good ratio by our standards. He was convicted of, people don't remember this. He was Louisiana opened up for gambling, for casino gambling. They're only going to have like 3 land-based casinos. All the rest of them are riverboat casinos, and they're all in New Orleans. And so the bidding for those was really competitive. And he let Eddie DeBartolo Jr. know that, for the right price, he'd make sure Eddie DeBartolo Jr. won one of the 3. And they did it. They got caught. That's why Eddie DeBartolo Jr. is no longer the owner of the San Francisco 49ers, too. Was that, it's in his family, but it's not him. He doesn't run it anymore. By the way, the first time that I ever knew anyone to have a remote control to start their car was people who work for his dad. worried about going sky high if they ran afoul of him. But he was colorful, Evan Everett's colorful guy, colorful governor, contributions to rural electrification, which, I guess that probably sounded like a liberal initiative then. And, but, really brought literally light, to a lot of central Louisiana, which is one of the really forgotten areas of America. People care about New Orleans and they care some about North Louisiana, but central Louisiana is pretty much abandoned by the big planters and so forth. So, he took care of them. I was twice with girls when I was in college. He would come into the restaurant with his entourage of friends and whatnot. He would come around all the tables, shake everybody's hands. And I was with two different girls, and he looked deep into the girls' eyes and said, "Those are the most beautiful eyes I've ever seen." Two different girls. So I told my sister this story, and she's like, "Yeah, he told me that too." I'm like, I would expect no different, right? So, he was a scoundrel, and he was, like he said, the money I stole wasn't from taxpayers. So a really interesting guy, and a big part of Louisiana's history, especially the last 50 years. R.I.P.
Yeah. No, look, for whatever else, his warts and all. The man was a legend. He will always be.
He was a pleasant crook. He was fun to be with.
Yeah, I don't know. He was, like you said, because he was colorful. You have some crooks that are just downright despicable, but being made him very entertaining, to watch and everything. This Bob is calling it the Eddie and Eddie show. So, but you're right about it. You see how I've made some of this Louisiana centric. Give you some Louisiana sports things to always talk about here. Get your perspective of that. And all that. And then I just wanted to, and I think it's great. The Zayla, this girl was amazing, but I also wanted just to throw in the other sports thing, which was on the home run derby. Congrats to Pete Alonso for winning again. But to me, the story for me was Trey Mancini. Cancer, comes back and he's playing. He's in the home run derby, and he loses to Alonso. There's no shame in that, but it's a tremendous story of Trey Mancini and what a great, courageous ball player he is. What a tremendous individual Trey Mancini is. So that's for the Baltimore people. And I'm not an Orioles fan by any stretch of the imagination, but I am a Trey Mancini fan.
Yeah, I've followed him since he started playing in their minor leagues. Because all the minor league teams around here most of them are Oriole affiliates, and so I've seen him play a long year. So, and a good guy. So good for him.
All right. Well, everyone, thanks again for joining us. Thanks, Bob, for all your comments. Please remember to stay safe and stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. And God bless America. We will see you again next week. I need to talk to you about the schedule next week. I'll send you an email or do it offline. All right, everyone. Thanks a lot.